Welcome everyone to today's tidbit on human factors and technology on this sunny day. My name is Thea and I'm from Marlag, which is Denmark's new cluster organization of maritime logistics. I'll be the host of today's tidbit, and in the studio we have invited two speakers today. It's Lisa Loloma Froholdt from Southern University of Denmark and Mads Ragnvald Nielsen from Scoutbase in Svendborg. Lisa will give a theoretical take on what human factors really are, and she will discuss how to build bridges between academia and the industry with Mads a little bit later. But if you haven't attended any tidbits before, I can briefly tell that it's half an hour of a cozy presentation, and mostly you will meet my dear colleague Henriette Dybkjær as the host. But today I got the chance to talk with these two nice people. And we always send from our home offices during this home office time. It's short and sweet, and you can tune in during your lunch. And we can't see you, so just eat your hot dog or whatever you are doing right now. Right now, during the weeks, every Wednesday, we serve tidbits in collaboration with Maritime Research Alliance and the Knowledge Institutions. So in 30 minutes, you will have a really compressed bite of knowledge. And we encourage you to contact the speakers afterwards if you want to keep in touch, maybe through LinkedIn or whatever you want to follow their research and work. You can ask all the questions you want in the chat, and I will pass over the questions to Lisa and Mads when they've done their presentation, and I'm sure they will be happy to answer it. So now there's nothing more from me, so you just lean back and enjoy, and I'll pass over the stage to Lisa.
Thank you very much, Tia, and welcome everybody, whether it's over your hot dog or your sandwich, squash sandwich. I'll just share the screen here right away. Hopefully it'll click on here. Can everybody see it?
I can see it, Lisa.
That's good. Okay, well, welcome everybody to a nice little spicy dish, as they call it in Marlag, about human factors, with the title, Which Humans and Whose Technology? My name is Lisa Loloma Froholdt, and I'm Senior Researcher and Head of Maritime Health and Society at the University of Southern Denmark.
And Lisa, sorry.
Yeah.
Right now we can see the next slide that you're presenting, so I don't know if you can set it up in
I don't know how to do that. Suddenly notes. Oh,
maybe you just start over again and you share it once you have already put it in the slide.
In mode. Okay, so stop sharing. Okay, sorry about that, everybody. I'll just
no problem at all.
Nope.
Yeah, it's much better. Perfect.
Okay. Okay, cool. Okay. So I just presented myself, yes, and I wanted to just sort of make the argument. There it is. This presentation today is a bridge presentation. So it's meant to come across to you as a bridge between academia and the industry. And in order to do that, my presentation will be short-haired, like the picture shows. So I won't be getting into very long, lengthy discussions, but to try to keep it to keep it on that bridge, so to say. So I'll talk a little bit about how we can define human factors, and then I will present a lens I'll get into a little bit more about what that is. And then I'll present very briefly a little bit of my own research on the topic. And for today, I've invited a guest, a human factors colleague, Mads Ragnvald Nielsen from Scoutbase in Svendborg in Denmark. And then, of course, we have our Q&A. So welcome. When we talk about human factors, human factors is the science of understanding how people interact with technology, and it draws on 3 different academic disciplines. The first one, the mental component of these interactions, and here we draw on studies that contribute to psychology and the study of the mind and the brain. Secondly, the central role of design, which draws then on and contributes to engineering approaches for systems analyses and modeling. And thirdly, the representation of information flow between people and technology, here contributing and drawing on computer communication and information science. And as you may, of course, hear, the scope of human factors is very broad. We come here from cognitive science over on the right-hand corner of your slide or your screen, moving towards engineering, anthropology, and up to psychology, and a whole range of different scientific fields there. So the scope of human factors is very, very quite broad. And the reason why we have human factors research is because we want to investigate the flow of performance, and we want to optimize it and safety in operations. And we can see human factors research in many diverse industrial areas, transport, aviation, healthcare, power generation units as well. And when we look at optimizing safety, Hollnagel also points to having that understanding that safety means how a system can adapt to varying conditions so that the intended outcomes are as acceptable as high as possible. And Cook, he also talks about how we can understand safety. And that when we talk about some of these unpredictable errors that occur in operations, it's not necessarily the humans, but the occurrence can actually be a combination of human behavior, but some of these many other different components of a whole system, which I'll tap into. The very new DNV white paper that just came out last month, Mads and I were talking about it last week, they also have this really nice definition of safety as an emergent property of maritime systems that are both robust and resilient, and have in place continuous improvement processes. So a system is not just the human, but also the organizational and the technical elements that together achieve things that each component could not accomplish on their own. And when we talk about the maritime industry, well, a range of industries, but we're in the maritime right now, we're also talking a lot about many of these mega trends. Right, we're talking about digitalization, decarbonization, green transition. Some of these things, these mega trends, are also being taken up by MALOG, but also within the Maritime Research Alliance. And here there are a range of really, really big questions that are calling on us that we need to address. And of course, I would like to do that through a human factors lens. But if we look at how to understand human factors, we have to follow in the footsteps of how an event unfolds. Okay, and I've done that in my research. A lot of human factors analyses are done retrospectively, but I think it's almost more than 10 years ago. I took part in a study where I asked a shipping company, if you do have some kind of event unfolding, could you call me so I could come in and follow in the footsteps of what it is that's happening? And there was in fact, an incident where a ship had lost all steering and the rudder wasn't working. There were a whole range of technical problems. A storm was coming. So it was all set up for a context of error. And I came in and followed them. And their following conclusion about this event was that there was a human error. And the error was due to the fact that the captain was of a different national culture than many of the technicians in the shipping company, and he had a psychological problem. But when I went in and investigated, I found that the captain was evaluated. There was nothing wrong with him psychologically, and the reason why the shipping company called it something to do with culture was because they said he was doing a lot of shouting. And when we looked at the communication, what was going on, the unfolding individual events, he was really just complaining about the shipping company not listening to him. And the fact that he couldn't get the ship to engage in the maneuvers that he wanted. And that had nothing to do with him, but it was somewhere else in the system that there was something going wrong. And I think that is very, very saying for a lot of the research that I've done, that context is king. And when we talk about this concept of human error and how we want to eliminate it, we can't just get rid of it by installing more technology or getting everybody on board to read a manual or even follow it. When we want to mitigate error in our system, when we want to optimize safety and performance, it's about understanding the organization of the crew, the task at hand, which includes technology, practice, and physical environment, but also these very intricate sense-making processes that take place sequentially as events unfold themselves. And of course, quite naturally, maritime professionals, they manage what is contextually relevant for them in relation to this specific operation. And I also looked into maritime radio communication at one point, where we have this SMCP that isn't followed by many, but it was more to say that the maritime professionals, they found out their own rules that suited the task at hand. So I think that here we could say the prescript doesn't really, or the manual doesn't really fit the task. So more to say, the research that I've delved into has pointed to the fact that there are a lot of things that are going on that we need to talk about when we talk about things going wrong. So let's put a lens on human factors. And when I talk about a lens, I put this, I align this with theory, because theory, I think, is just a way of looking at a phenomenon. It's just a lens. We can replace it with another lens, but it gives us that opportunity to investigate a phenomenon. And the lens that I've chosen to present to you today is something that you probably all are aware of, the septagon model by Kuster from 2007. And I think it's a really good, understandable model because it shows these many elements that are part of human factors. We have, of course, up the top there, we have the individual, a captain or an officer. We have the group, crew. We have the organization. And here we have procedures, we have schedules, we have instructions. We also have society and culture, the socio-political and economic environment, all the rules and regulations, right? And we have processes. We have work practices, our planning, our maintenance processes, and we have environment, work environment. We have light conditions, noise, vibrations on board a ship. And then we have the technology. And here we have equipment, our instruments, our devices. So this is to say, this is a lens that we could look at human factors as a whole range, as in fact a system that consists of components that are interdependent, and that we need to look at interdependently when we're looking at what it is that goes wrong. And I think with some of these mega trends that are coming up, we need to find out some of the right approaches in order to optimize safety in some of these different situations. If we're talking about decarbonization, if we're talking about digitalization. And I'm thinking maybe that we can even use the lens of human factors if we're talking about addressing some of these mega trends. If we take it, if we take it through, I won't go through all of them for you, but if we take, for example, the individual, do we know what to expect of the individual's cognitive capabilities and limitations, their human physiology and behavior in a digitalized, decarbonized, and green transitioned world? Do we know what kind of decisions they'll be making? Where do we need their attention to be focused? And what kind of conditions will enable individuals to master situation awareness? Do we know what kind of workloads they'll be having? Do we know how to ensure their safety in a world where these trends have come into existence? And I think we need to ask ourselves some of these questions here when we're talking about how we're going to address some of these mega trends, and bring them in as early as possible. It's not just a question of talking about, are we going to use, is it going to be hydrogen that wins the race? We need to bring some of these questions into the equation. So I think the Decepticon lens could be used, and I think that if we do that, we can talk about, yeah, well, which humans and whose technology? Well, it belongs to the system, right? Which humans are only just a little part of, and I think that it's a discussion that we have from time to time in the maritime, but we unfortunately need to keep on having it, right? And that's why I've invited my good colleague, Mads Ragnvald Nielsen in, who has a master degree in human factors, and he's co-owner of Scoutbase, a small maritime business in Svendborg, Denmark. Hello, Mads.
Hi, Lisa. Thank you so much for letting me join your wonderful presentation here.
Thank you. I'll just stop sharing this. So Mads, what would be your initial sort of first take on what you've heard here today, and the question of whose technology and which humans?
Yeah, I just need to sort of put on the right hat here. I think first of all, because as part of the sort of the lineup to this presentation, the discussions we've had, Lisa, it's quite evident that it's something we can talk about also at the theoretical level for a long time, but that's not the purpose here. I've sort of positioned myself with a foot in each camp, you could say. So I need to stand on my sort of more practically oriented foot here today, and that's what I'm going to try to do, and try to outline some reflections that I have from a sort of more practical perspective, and how that sort of aligns with some of your points that you're making, and also try to, in a way, enforce or support your argument, because I totally agree that it's important that we don't lose track of people, essentially, or human factors. I mean, how people interact with all these new fancy technologies that we bring into our domain at the moment.
Yes.
What's my initial reaction? How do I understand human factors at an operational level? If you could say that.
Yeah.
I think it's very much about making sure that there is a fit in terms of what it is that you just raised as well. We have all these components that are interacting,
yeah,
and we need to find a way to, at a very sort of operational, low practical level, almost to make sure that these things fit together, because otherwise, I mean, there's going to be friction, and that's where the potential for processes sort of breaking down will lie.
Yeah.
Sort of what I would say in terms of if I was to give an advice to shipping companies or whoever is sort of have been granted the task of trying to work on human factors internally, I would keep in mind that it's really about making things work. And in the context of, if we look at the seafarers, it's about making things work for the seafarers, really. If you are an HSEQ person, you should view it as a very sort of noble task of yours to do your best to help them succeed every day, essentially. I don't want to turn the concept of human factors into a management tool. It's not a nudging tool, which that's another debate, but which you could argue that we might see with, let's say, safety culture, the discussion around safety culture, which can be boiled down to in some instances a wish list of organizations. What would we like our people to do, essentially?
So what you're saying, if I could just interrupt you, so what you're saying is, in practical terms, it's not about finding out why things go wrong, but how you make things work. Is that understood correctly?
Yes, I mean, you can put it like that, but to put it even more practical, I would say it's about being mindful or aware of when, let's say, you make a decision in one end of the company or the organization, how does that disseminate through the organization, and what effect will it have on people in other ends? You can, of course, put it on sort of very much sharp end one end and blunt end in the other, but it's also all the things in between, right? Just being aware that because of this sort of interaction that you also highlight with the Septicon model, decisions or whatever we do to influence the system in one part of it will have sort of effects in other parts, and create a sort of awareness of this. And it comes down to also discussing different goals and the different priorities that exist in organizations. Okay, I'm here in on my chair, been granted the role of doing something, particular things I would like to achieve by that, but it might not fit totally, or by default with goals existing other places in the organization. So being aware of these conflicts that might exist, and who is really sort of suffering if we just roll over with our agenda because we believe that that's the one that should win, but really to keep in mind that whatever we do will have effects on people around the organization. The other thing I would say, I mean, how to define human factors sort of from an operational point of view. And that might come back to what you just said about making things work, because human factors for me is really all those things going on that in a way influence our performance, whether that's good or bad. It's that, I mean, it becomes almost impossible to map out that. The Septicon model is sort of doing that in a simplified way, as we've also discussed, Lisa. Every model or
it's just a lens.
Yeah, every model is, and yeah, it is, and it's an approximation to reality. Yes. I mean, a lot of stuff is going on. I mean, you could break all of those things even further down that you have in that model, right? But really be aware, or first of all, acknowledge that they do interact, as the model also suggests, and understand that things don't work in isolation, right? So everything will, to some extent, reflect on our performance. So
to the question of which humans and whose technology, what would be your take on that?
Well, yeah, that's a good question, because there is this tendency to see things very hierarchical in maritime, right? But humans, human factors is everywhere present, as I see it. I mean, it's not just the sharp end. It's not just whatever. I mean, it's really everywhere, right? So in a sense, which humans? Everybody, I would say. And whose technology? Well, in a sense, the same answer. I mean, everybody's technology, because thinking about it, all the technology that we create because we believe they will do something good for us as people, either collectively or because of our sort of individual agendas that we have in our lives and works and so forth. So yeah, it belongs to everybody, and we need to see it like that. And I think we need, and again, it comes back to this point about sort of side effects of decisions. That if we put a piece of technology in place, there needs to be a fit, really, and I think it would be ethically sound to think about it broadly. If we, I mean, just a low practical example of that, replacing a human process with an automated process of a robot or whatever it is, right?
Mads, if I just might take one of the questions from the floor that have come up here. Is there not a problem with the introduction of technology and automation when we still rely on humans to intervene when things start to go wrong? Still, perhaps the human operator has had no practical work for maybe a long time. Will this not enhance the possibility of putting the human error label on accidents?
Should I give my take on that?
Yeah, you by all means.
Yes. Well, I think that's absolutely true. I mean, and it comes down to how we talk about things, right? The technology agenda is a very much sort of engineering-driven agenda, where we can boil things down to bolts and nuts and so forth. And it also sort of, that agenda holds a dear place in the world, you could say, right now. It's almost like we trust technology more than we trust people, which is a great fallacy, as I see it, for a variety of reasons. One being that people still, it's still people who design and develop and manufacture that piece of automation. Yes. So it's not like it lives its own autonomous life, even though it's an sort of an automated way of doing something. And if we give people a piece of technology that makes their lives easier, of course they will take advantage of that. I mean, just a practical example of that from the maritime domain, the ECDIS versus the old paper chart. If you give people an ECDIS in front of them where you can see in real time where you are, that's the preferred solution compared to walking over to the chart table and do all your manual stuff there. So from a cognitive sort of load point of view, it makes sense to take to use the technology. But what then happens if the technology fails us? Then we might not have the training and the skills and the we might have been slow in the sort of manual thing. So it's very difficult to roll back in a sense. I mean, it is sort of just a train that just runs out there once it's started, right? Very difficult to backtrack.
Yeah, and I mean that's our cognitive DNA. Our brains are tuned to use as little power as possible. So everything that can become an automatic thought to save our power energy on awareness, that's what our brain will do. So relying on technology, yes, we will be prone to do that because that leaves more resources for awareness. So it's actually something that we need to take into consideration, right? And I think as an answer to this question is also what you pointed at before, right? Which I see as a little bit some of the thing that I've been doing research in, the fit or the context, right? That we have to focus on the context, and of course the human is part of that, but all the other things that humans have created, the technology, the design, the manuals, the noise, the vibration, the regulations and the rules, all of it combined. And we need to keep on saying this and doing research and engaging in projects between academia and the industry where we have this focus. I think is necessary so that we could harness some of this knowledge and really make something out of the momentum that we actually have on some of these mega trends.
I agree, and I think that's a very much of a sort of quality way of looking at it. You could see each of these components to hold a certain quality or the opposite almost, right? And I mean, the sort of aggregated quality of our processes, the system output, if you will be reflected on that. So, I mean, back to the point on your on the cognitive DNA, was that what you called it?
Yeah,
yeah. We need to make sure that what we feeds into the system holds a certain quality in terms of fit, especially if it's people who are to use it to some extent.
Yeah, yeah. There was Ole Svendsen. He wrote, "Is that not the problem, that the train is just running? How do we get the humans with or on the train?"
That is the big question, I think. I mean, because and I don't even know where to start on that, because there are many agendas at play when it comes to this: political, economic, also social, yes. But the social agendas tend to be pushed down when they're up against economy and politics. I think so. So that is a really, really good question. And I think one way of looking at it is to say that we will not be able to stop that train all of a sudden. It's not like we can just pull the brake as it is right now, but there might be small things that we can do every day to take things in another direction, if that is what we want. But I guess it starts with questioning our assumptions about what, almost like, and I warned you on this, Lisa, I tend to get philosophical around this, but it's almost like we need to ask ourselves the question: what kind of world is it that we want to live in, right? And what trends, what mechanisms, what all these things going on there, how do they support that?
Yeah.
And of course, I mean, agreeing on this, that's what politics is about. And yeah.
We have a question, a last question, because we're coming towards the end of our little spicy dish here today, from Hansa. Hi, Hansa. How about the occupational health and safety of seafarers towards all of this progress? What can we do to protect them more? Well, if I was to take that one, we definitely need to have the discussions early on. For example, yesterday I took part in a big workshop in omission Power X, where we were discussing the future energy of transport in a range of areas. We need to have these kinds of discussions already here when we're creating the roadmap, how to think, how to take a systems approach. Do we want an economical ship, or do we want what kind of price do we want to put on performance and safety, and bring it in right in the early stages, just as we bring the engineers in, chemical engineers in, bring human factors specialists in as early as possible, to inform the discussion and make sure that not just seafarers, but every single component of the system, that we think it in as a synergy. Do you have a final comment, Mads?
It was a nice comment you made on that, Lisa. It sort of brings me to what it is I do from a practical point of view every day, because it was really in a way to try to address that question that we started building the Scoutbase platform, sort of on the assumption that we need everybody's input if we are to set the right agenda in the future, and we need to find a way to also loop in the seafarers' points of view and their local rationality, essentially giving them an active voice in what it is that works and does not, and then surface that and have an honest discussion about it. And it's going to be difficult. There's not going to be quick fixes, no, but we need to have the discussion, as you point out, I think, so that we can make better decisions, really, when it comes to questions directly on health and safety of seafarers.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, good point, Mads. And on that note, I think we'll conclude to keep our time on the 30 minutes. So this concludes the little presentation we've had today on human factors. You've talked together with a researcher and a practitioner around this topic, and we hope we've given you a lens to look at this phenomenon, and some answers to which humans and whose technology. Thank you very much for taking part today, Mads. Thank you, Marlog. And we could look at some of the further questions that have come in the chat and answer them maybe as we finish here. But thank you very much for today.
Okay, just before you're leaving, guys, I also had some questions, but now we are a little bit over time, so you're free to log out and jump over to your inbox, but I'd like to give you also a great thank you, and I hope that you know that we really appreciate the work that you are doing. I know also that Marlog, my colleagues, they're working on some projects and also some events where they are focusing on the link between technology and humans. So we keep just an eye on our event page as well. Well, I think let's just jump over my personal questions. I can pass them over to you afterwards. I think you did a really great job with the questions here in your presentation. So that's all from us. And tomorrow again, you can tune into another tidbit where it's Peter Sand from BIMCO. He will give a shipping analysis, and it's the third time he is in the tidbit studio, and he's really the king of a shipping analysis. So tune in if you are interested in this. And thank you so much, Lisa and Mads. I hope you have a great day, and take care out there.
Thank you. Likewise.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation.